All right, now we are live, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Untitled Mateo Heilig, Alex Ertad um, joint venture. As Mateo just said, where are you, Mateo? Venice, California.
Yeah, in the pouring rain, the
Pouring rain of Venice. I'm in the
the
cold.
subtropical paradise of
Yeah,
Venice, California.
72 and sunny, right? Isn't that
Yeah.
the? But not today. And I am in Salt Lake City, Utah. So combined, we are somewhere in the West Desert of Nevada. Hopefully not in like the large nuclear testing site they have down there, because that would be less than ideal. Anyhow, today, what are we going to talk about, Mateo?
Well, first we're gonna go over some pet peeves about other. We're just gonna basically bash other sports talk show hosts.
That's how we figure we're gonna make an imprint, just bashing other people.
Yeah,
They'll
we're
have,
not we're not
they'll
we're not
have
the,
to start.
we're not doing the brown nosing route. We're doing the red nose route, whatever that means.
I don't know. I hope
Uh,
that's not a racial
no,
connotations
that's
there
just
for anyone who might be angry.
bashing their. Yeah, you guys can get angry. That's it's bashing their noses to
Gotcha.
get through them instead
Okay.
of
So what are what
sticking
are
our
we
noses.
what are we complaining about?
The first thing, I just think that most of these guys, I think that they should have term limits. I don't think anybody can consistently put quality content out for more than a few years. I
See,
think
I
that
disagree.
you
Are you
disagree.
are you familiar with a Lou Holtz? He should still be on TV, in my opinion.
I'm not talking about TV. I'm talking about radio, where they
Okay.
just yap for like hours on end. Yeah.
I mean, fair enough. I agree because there's only so many. I mean, no one's gonna just throw away their views after a year and just start fresh.
Yeah.
There's only so many ways you can spin the same narrative, and that's really what sports are. Is it's pretty much the same narrative over and over again.
I mean, some of the guys like can squeak out more just by having the innate ability to fill to turn 1 minute of material into 10 minutes of material without just with no effort. That's Jim Rome. No,
Is he still even? Does
that's
he
a
even still
rare.
have a show?
He is on the radio. I heard him last week. He's
Oh.
kind of. I mean, I know we hate him, but his
You like him. You can
I
admit it.
I like his radio show, and the reason I liked his radio show was the emphasis on the callers because they
Yeah,
proved that he wasn't that great. Like what made the show great
it's the callers.
was the callers. It
Yeah,
was there was a competition every day to see who could have the best take,
yeah.
and it was
I think
quality
shipping
over
it out
quantity.
to callers is a that's what you do if you have time to fill, basically. Which
Yeah,
is understandable because guys like Colin Cowherd or Jim Rome are on the radio by themselves, if not for the callers, for like 3.5 hours, which is ridiculous.
yeah.
How you can just sit there and talk for that long is beyond me.
We shall soon learn, hopefully.
Well, but at least we're talking to each other as opposed to just talking
Oh,
to
Colin
ourselves.
Cowherd has a sidekick
Oh, he
who
does? I thought he
or
was doing
two.
that thing solo.
No, not anymore.
No,
Jim Rome is solo, other than whatever
still.
his
It's because
the
little.
muscle he has sitting next to him or whatever. He talks to the call screener and the producer.
The insider tip on Jim Rome I've heard is that he is insufferable to work with, and that's why nobody wants to work with him.
I can imagine.
Okay, next pet peeve.
So
So term limits. People need to
term
get off the
limits.
air after. Well, how long are you thinking?
I'd say 3 years,
3 years.
or it's go down to 1 hour.
Well, what if people still want them? What if they're popular?
I guess leave them on there, but are they?
I
I've
mean,
stopped
here's the
listening
thing.
to. I no longer listen to Jay Moore. He used to. I thought he was great. I don't listen to Jim Rome anymore. I mean, I'll occasionally pop in if I'm driving, but not for more than like 10 minutes.
Oh, you're listening to these people when you're not in the car?
No, not really. But I mean, for a longer duration, for the 20-minute car rides, I will listen to Petros and Money. I still think they
They're
have
fantastic. See, they need to stay on forever.
they are great. They do have more of a local flavor,
That's true.
which kind of ingratiates them. But their competitors on the ESPN affiliate are I was into for maybe like a month or two. It used to be Marcellus and Max Kellerman, and now it's
Yeah.
Marcellus and some other ex-athlete, I think.
Mm.
And they're just way too complacent. He's like an ex-mediocre football player who must have just slid into that role with just by being an ex-football player. He's just kind of there to talk. Like, he's the authority on what it's like to be an athlete, and he really doesn't try. He has good takes sometimes, but most of it's just him like goofing off. And what really irritates me is the Jalen and Jacoby show.
Oh yeah, you don't like that
shows
one?
like that. I can't stand the hip hop beat that they have going in the
Oh
background.
yeah, the like smooth.
Are you talking or are you rapping? What is it? You got to have.
So they have it going on the whole time?
I pretty much the whole time. Even like if it's more than just the introduction, that's too much for me.
Yeah.
It has to be unimpeded rants or good back and forth with wild sound effects like the Petros and Money show.
Yeah. Well, that's just shock jock at its best. I mean,
and
they found a recipe that works and they're sticking with it.
And it also helps the kind of dichotomy of his just acerbic Greek fat voice and Matt Money Smith's more laid back, fatherly, I don't know what you call it, but yeah,
vibe.
They've got they've got a good recipe there.
That's good. One of my pet peeves.
And they don't take themselves too seriously.
Right. Well, that's the key. You can't take yourself too seriously. People just in general, not even just to radio, people who take themselves too seriously are one of my pet peeves. Another one of my pet peeves.
What made Jim Rome's show so good too was just you're laughing at him for taking himself so seriously.
Frank Caliendo. If people haven't seen Frank Caliendo's making fun of Jim Rome, you should watch it immediately because just Jim Rome has just like a disdain for all of humanity when you see him talk. You're like, oh, wow, that guy just hates people. And he somehow, I want to know who taught him how to pronounce words.
The 4 syllables, yeah.
Well, he's just throwing syllables all over the place. Maybe it's like an airtime trick.
Deplorable. But you should also listen to his rants on anything. They're pretty gold.
Oh yeah, they're
softball guy.
One of my pet peeves is people like just the hot take culture, especially on radio shows, where people are like, okay, I guess the producer or whoever is like, all right, we need to fill airtime. So what are we going to talk about? Well, let's find something that we don't actually have a disagreement about and just decide to disagree on this for no reason. And I feel like on the Shannon Sharp and Skip Bayless show, which I got to watch a little bit last week and is entertaining, but I feel like whenever they have that, it's like Skip Bayless gets dibs on the good side, and Shannon Sharp is like thrown into like, okay, Shannon,
which
you
is the opposite of how it used to be with Skip Bayless, right?
Right. Skip Bayless would always pick the harder one because he's said before, like he doesn't actually care about any of this stuff. He just likes making arguments. Like he cares about sports, but I mean, there are a few things that he really, really like. He's a fan in a lot of respects, but a lot of it is just, he just needs to feel a certain way. That's what he gets paid for, and he gets paid good money, so he's going to do it. But we don't need to make mountains out of molehills, Stephen A. Smith. So please, not everything is. I guess
that's what people like. I read an article today about just how profitable fake news is.
I guess people just love being infuriated, which is beyond me because I would not want to be infuriated at any point. But
well, you got to accept that. Your tastes probably lie in pretty rarefied air, and I don't mean that in like a hoity-toity, snooty way. It's just.
Or you don't.
You don't have mainstream tastes.
I don't.
Let's put it that way.
Which is why we are broadcasting. I think I haven't checked how many views our last video had, but my guess is it's just Justin.
Yeah, it could be.
So Justin, hello. Yeah. But we are going to one of our favorite constant conversations is big men and Mateo.
Yeah, we're gonna take a minor.
Oh, sorry, not yet.
We're just gonna clear something up. Last week.
Yes.
Last week you put forward the argument that in tennis.
Yes.
I won't bore our listeners too long with tennis, but
let's not go back down
the range of talent from 1 to 20 is within 1%, and I'm just gonna have to. I'm looking at the top 20 right now, and I can confidently say that numbers 19 and 20 they both happen to be big. Speaking of big men, they're large men. John Isner is probably 6'10", and Ivo Karlovic pushing 7 feet as well. They will never win a major title. No chance.
Okay, but you have to. Okay,
and it's
continue.
Not.
But I'm going to say that
they do not have the ground game that. Let's go to the top. Andy Murray, Novak Djokovic, Milos Raonic,
Raonic,
or Stan Wawrinka. possess. They are one-trick
Okay,
ponies.
fine. I'll chalk those up to those two, but those are, I'm looking at the list right now.
David Ferrer, 21. He was always on the cusp of winning the French Open.
Yeah.
Pablo Cuevas, I've never heard of him.
No, okay, but we're talking about the top 20. Look at the top 20. I'm looking at it right now.
Berdych
All of those
was
guys
close.
is
Monfils was
Grigor
close.
might be another one who's just like super tall and he's getting points that way by beating people with the serve. I can't remember what he looks like.
And then some of these are too young to really judge right now.
But no, Grigor is only 6'3". He beat Marcos Bagdatis recently. So
I don't want to talk about the young guy. I want to say these guys who've made it through their career, like in their 30s now, and they've been in the top 20 and they've never won a major because they are not as good as the top 5.
Yeah, but I think
Sam Querrey, 29, he's just not as good. It's not mental. He just is not as good.
Where is he?
Nowhere near. He's at 31.
Yeah, okay, but we were talking about the top 20, Mateo.
Yeah. Some of these guys are too young though to really judge.
Yeah, but you have a good, like what we were saying is you have a good core of guys like
I'd say the top 5.
Marin Cilic, Gael Monfils, Thomas Berdych, Joe Wilfred Tsonga, Richard Gasquet. Like those are the kind of guys that are good players and that could just straight up head-to-head beat a really good player in like. And
I'd say there's about 10 players that are really competing. I don't think it's 20.
Okay, but even if it's 10, that's way more than there was like 15 years ago.
All right. Well, yeah, we're not neither of us are tennis historians. Well, we're not great tennis historians. We're mediocre, probably top 60th, 70th percentile, I'd say. So we're gonna leave that one where it is.
Yeah, we're gonna.
All right, on to big men.
And tell us why.
The inspiration behind this.
Yes.
I was listening to one of the esteemed sports radio hosts on the radio months ago, and they were doing the tired talk of who's the best ever in basketball, who's the GOAT. And this was Colin Cowherd, and he was making the argument that big men should be excluded from this list because they are like the trust fund kid. They've won the genetic lottery and they just have to be there. And that's completely wrong.
Yeah, and
unfortunately we have to agree on this.
Agree on that. We agree on that part, but I think we do have differing takes on what makes a good big man. So we're going to do a little deep dive into big men today and kind of just talk about. I have a couple questions lined up about what are we looking for in a big man. I guess my main one is to you, Mateo. Which one is more? Is their offensive production or their defensive side of the ball more important for a big man to you?
Well, you can't even be in consideration for the best if you don't have both.
Well, not even the best, but I'm just saying. I think we had a moment for a while where we had big men in the league who could not do either one, who couldn't really play offense very well and who couldn't play defense very well. But now we seem to have a little bit of a resurgence with the big men, like Kwame Brown. Homeboy couldn't do anything. Like he was just.
Well, he had 6 fouls, right? That was right. I haven't heard that expression for a while.
Right. Well, because the game is moving so far outward, out towards the perimeter with, our good friends, the Golden State Warriors, I think it makes it so that way, you have nobody to foul. If you're a big man on defense and you can't foul anybody because they're not feeding the big men on offense. Yeah,
I'd still say that rebounding is important.
Okay.
And there's smaller things that are more informed and experienced basketball listeners might understand. Like a big man can set a much better pick than a little man.
It's true.
There will always be I guess you have to assign some value to just bodies.
Yeah, being able to run the pick and roll is important. For sure.
Andrew Bogut he was really good at being a moving rock.
Right. But for example, we have different types of big men, right? Even in the league, we have Kevin Love, who is an offensive juggernaut big man. And then on the other side of the coin, you think of like Rudy Gobert, who is a very defensive-minded big man. To you, which is more important? If you could have Kevin Love or you could have Rudy Gobert?
I think it depends completely on the team.
Okay. Well, if you're building a team and you have to pick a center.
Oh, you want Kevin Love, but he's not a center.
Really? See, I would disagree. I would take Rudy Gobert because defense, as they say, defense wins championships. And if you can't defend on the low block or
I don't think
protect the basket,
that's a good example.
you're useless.
I think you're fluffing up Rudy Gobert a little too much.
I don't think so. Have you watched him play? He is a dominant defensive force in the paint.
All right, he's on Dwight Howard's level.
Dwight Howard now? Yeah, peak Dwight Howard. Maybe I don't know if he's that good. He's close though. He's the best we've seen in a long time. But like, yeah, let's think about Dwight Howard back when he was like, I don't know what happened to Dwight Howard, but basically since he's been on the Orlando Magic, he has not been the same. And it's saddening because he was like a lot of fun to watch. Again, it should not be hard if you're 7 feet tall to protect the basket. You just put your hands up and stand there. Like, come on.
Yeah, and the player who I've just consistently hated on for the last 5 years, I'm finally coming around.
Oh no,
DeAndre Jordan.
Yeah. Are you seeing the light with him now?
I am, and it took a little push, but I was doing as I always did and taking every opportunity to bash him, and it was a guy in the gym locker room, and he said, "You know what though? He stays on the court, and that is valuable. He does not get hurt, and he's a great defender. He does everything. He can't score. He can't shoot.
Right.
I don't think they've not advanced in the playoffs because of
right. It's not because of him.
He's done everything he should have to do.
Right. I agree.
But he could be so much better. He could be. I mean, he's got the athleticism to be.
He does.
To be.
But that's where I think
the best big man. He does. He's no Shaq, but he could be.
Right. Well, so here's my biggest complaint about like Colin Cowherd's statement about big men is that I think that proves it to me. Like you can't just be big and be good because we've seen so many very large human beings. Sean Bradley comes to mind, who are not good in the NBA because it takes more to be a good big man than just being big.
And the
offensive skill is very difficult. This is why it is hard to find, and maybe this is why it's more important to have an offensive center who can really score you a lot of points, and they're hard to find.
So you're coming around.
I'm coming around. Because it's hard to score points on the low post. Like, I think the main culprit has been athletes jumping from college to the NBA after 1 year, and you can't really work on skills when you're in the NBA. It's just too late. You're playing 82 games a season. There's no real practice time. And I think the game has suffered because of it. You look at like post-player moves. I mean, DeAndre Jordan to me is like a textbook example. He has no post moves offensively.
Yeah, his range is about 2 feet from the basket.
It's a dunk. If he's not slamming the ball into the hoop.
He can make a 2-foot hook shot.
Okay.
I was impressed when I saw it. I was like, whoa, did he just not dunk? He did.
Made a hook shot. Did the ball just leave his hand and then go on its way?
And I thought that was it. Like the Clippers are, preordained now that DeAndre Jordan's making.
Just give him the trophy now. But no, I mean, I think we've seen time and time again, it is not that easy as just showing up and being giant.
And it is very important. I
think on some level, Colin Cowherd is right. You should, if you're 7 feet tall and you don't get a scholarship offer to a Division I school, then you must be the most unathletic human being in the history of the world.
Well, it's harder to be athletic when you're 7 feet tall. I mean,
that is also another thing to consider. But you basically just have to have a pulse and be able to walk.
let's think about.
There's a
Remember,
D1 school that's gotta want to give you for 7 feet tall. You can teach athleticism.
Let's do. No, you can't.
Yeah, you can.
Let's do some statistics here.
Okay.
All right. Just out of the 6'3" humans in the country or in the world.
Yeah.
So point guard size.
That's a big point guard.
All right.
I think Damian Lillard would take exception to that.
6 foot to 6'3" point guard range. How many of those? How many of the people in the world? We're not even talking about skill, but how many of those guys that size have the athleticism to play in the NBA? What percentage?
Of 6'3" males, I would say to play in the NBA at 6'3", you have to have really good skills. But I think the thing is
I know, but I'm saying assuming that
there's a sliding scale.
The skills can be given to you. You can acquire the skills, but you can't acquire the athleticism.
Right. Well, you basically gotta put in a lot of time to.
No. We're not talking about time. We're talking assuming. Okay, I didn't phrase the question.
I don't understand what your question is.
Here it is. Assuming every 6 foot to 6'3" male.
Yeah.
Sorry, I mean this is a very sexist.
Well, we're talking about the NBA.
We're talking about the NBA. 6 foot to 6'3" male. Assuming they all have the same skills.
Yeah.
Let's say, who's got very bland point guard skills?
No, because it's hard to be a point guard.
All right. So they've all got the skills. How many of them have the athleticism?
At a young age, I mean, it's
at 20.
So many things come into it.
We're thinking too much. My point is this.
Yes, go. Stop.
Just because you're 7, like there's probably the same. I'm no expert on human physiology, but of the 7 foot men, 6'11", whatever, only even just because they're 7 feet doesn't make them athletic. You have to have less athleticism than you do as a 6'3" person, but still, the vast majority of 7-footers probably can't move very well. So you're even at the very beginning, you're choosing from probably the top 50% of 7-footers, and there are so few 7-footers out there that's a pretty small number.
Right, it's a small field, which is why they're so attractive. Which is why I stand behind my statement that if you are 7 feet tall and play organized basketball, and you do not get a Division I scholarship offer, you should stop playing basketball.
Yeah, you're not an athlete, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with not.
Right, you go do something else. But I think, yes. So the one thing I think of is Yao Ming, right? Not athletically very gifted, but his skills were really, really good. And I think what that points to for me is he came up in a Chinese system where they were just doing drills probably the entire time. There was, I imagine, like a no sunlight, like dark gym, and just drills after drills after drills. Like watching Hakeem Olajuwon tape being like, you're going to be like this guy. And like practicing like the fade step and like the spin on the low block. Like if DeAndre Jordan tried to do that in a game, to like spin around someone that he was like backing up, he would probably fall flat on his face and he would trip over his own feet.
He would travel. I think you're making it
right.
a little.
Okay, well, but you know what I'm saying. Like this, yeah. The skills are not at that level.
And you do get and this is true for every position. There's a marginal gain that you get by adding skills to a certain level of athleticism. Like
absolutely,
the ceiling. It's the concept of the ceiling. Russell Westbrook has a higher ceiling than, let's say. Wow. See, this is.
Here's the thing. Everybody in the NBA pretty much. Well, yeah, but I also think you look at the age difference in those two players. It's like 20 years.
Even I'm talking about at their primes, but
right. Yeah. But that's also really hard to compare. I think one thing that goes up as time goes on is the athleticism in players, because kids are being. We have like smarter nutrition plans now. We have like smarter physical training. Like even like what high schoolers have now compared to when we were in high school 10 years ago, like the things available to them in terms of the internet for injury prevention and like what's good. Like back when we were in high school, people still thought bagels were healthy. Like that idea is ridiculous, and now it has been debunked. Or we have much better ideas of like, okay, what can electrical stimulation do for injury? Now it's used like all over the place, and it was like barely used in high school.
Some of that stuff, I mean, it's just noise. Like icing, they don't even know if icing is really worthwhile.
Yeah, they do. Well, anyway, okay. We're not going to go down that. But I do think
this is not so.
My point is that
Justin will be hosting the sports medicine.
Ooh, we should have that. Okay, that's a great idea, Mateo.
The Mythbusters,
where we just grill Justin about like sports doctor practices.
For us and our listeners, we will get no conclusive answers. Everything will have could be either way.
It'll basically just be a show of me asking, really, do they have to fund a study for that? That seems like a waste of money. I bet common sense. But so what I was saying is that the athleticism of the players has gone up. So you look at someone like Manute Bol, who was basically just super tall, wasn't very skilled. Well, granted, we're talking like 20 years ago. Wasn't very skilled, didn't have a ton of athleticism, but he was just a really tall male who like didn't have gigantism, so he could actually move. Versus someone like Kevin Durant is 6'11", and the fact that somebody who's 6'11" can have the athleticism that Kevin Durant has and like the quick moves and all that stuff is really, really impressive.
Yeah, that's pretty outrageous. And so that would be an example.
The point I wanted to make.
Yeah, that's why Colin Cowherd is wrong. You could consider Kevin Durant a big man, and he is more than just. Sure, he won the genetic lottery, but he's using it. I mean, I would argue that every basketball player, in some sense, with the exception of Nate Robinson and
point guards,
and maybe and Chris Paul, they're genetic freaks. LeBron would be nothing if LeBron was like Chris Paul's size. He'd be Chris Paul. He'd be a little bit. He'd be Russell Westbrook if he was Chris Paul's size.
Right. That is a good point. Pretty much everybody who's in the NBA, except for a very few, have something that makes them one of a kind.
So you can't knock the guy who has the biggest gift. Like, that's just...
Right. Well, especially I think when we see that there are some people who have the gift and then just are like... Because the thing is skill is not a gift, right? So if you build up your skills yourself, then that's just taking what gifts you have and accentuating them over hard work and time. But that's not that you can't just assume that that's a given.
Yeah, and I have a very good analogy that's going to really
am I going to
divide our audience. You might divide it. Let's think about real trust fund kids.
Yeah.
Not all of them make something of it. Some of them just hang around and play on yachts and coke or squander their fortune. Plenty of them have plenty of fortunes have been squandered by handing them over to kids.
It's true.
And others do good, and some create an empire. So I would say.
Are you defending Donald Trump right now?
I'm not defending him. I'm saying that he would be the example of a trust fund of a big man who used what he was given.
Oh no, we're not making that comparison. Choose somebody else.
There's plenty
Mitt Romney.
He didn't have. He did have the same.
Yeah, he did.
Gift. Yeah,
he started his first company with $1 million.
Julia Louis-Dreyfus. How about that one?
Was she a trust fund kid?
Oh, they're
Yeah, but okay, but what does money have to do with your ability as an actor?
He buys you acting classes.
Okay, we're not going to go down this.
Okay,
but yes. So the whole trust fund kid thing, sure, yes, you have to make do with the gifts that you have, and you have to use those. So, but more constructive big man talk. Who's your number one big man all time? In my opinion, there's only one right answer to this, so I hope you get it right.
Ooh. So are we talking about modern era or?
Well, yeah, I mean, we're not going to talk about like Bill Russell
or Wilt. I'm going with Kareem. Not Kareem. Hakeem.
Hakeem.
Yeah.
Okay. Hakeem Olajuwon. That's a solid choice. Not my one answer. I think Shaquille O'Neal. Easy. I think
He was close second, but I think that Hakeem. You look at what he did. He came into the league immediately. Same thing with Shaq. Immediately transformed his team into a contender. I think it was more, and I think it was more Hakeem than it was Shaq when the championships were won. Who was Hakeem's sidekick? He had
Clyde.
He had good players around him, but
They had a great. That Rockets team was really, really good. Also, I hate making this I hate making this argument because I think it's like petty, but those were the 2 years that Michael Jordan left the league. So were they really that good?
yeah, I guess. But let's think about it this way. I'd say they're about equal. Hakeem and Shaq. Shaq obviously had more gift.
Right. So the one thing that I think is interesting about Shaq is he is probably the one player who I think of all of basketball who he's one of the ones who did the least with his, like, if he had been a hard worker, Shaquille O'Neal would have won like 15 championships.
I don't know if we can say that much. He didn't. So you think there was that much?
Dude, so
more
okay,
potential
yes,
runway
because
on
he
Shaq
would
was-
he would come into like training camp like 50 pounds overweight. He would basically play his way into shape with the start of the season. He didn't do like any off-season conditioning. That's why his toe is always hurt, because he would just come in and be like game ready and not be in shape at all. And
So you're just talking about. We're not extrapolating skill. We're talking. You're just talking about fitness now.
well, I bet a
You're not
hard
saying,
work.
"Oh, if Shaq could have shot the three, and if he could have shot free throws."
Well, no, I don't think he didn't need to.
Yeah.
I
So
think
you're
the
saying
free
if he was
throws
the
aren't
way
a part
he
of it.
was, but he didn't get hurt. If he was the way he was, but he just ate better and
Right. I think if he like spent more time in the gym and ate better, Shaq, if you're listening, I love you, but this is just truth. And I'm not saying it's easy, but I'm saying, he could have done it. For those at home, there's a movie on Netflix. It's a part of the 30 for 30 series that ESPN does. It's about the Orlando Magic and when they got Shaquille O'Neal. Watching Shaquille O'Neal in his like prime, like right when he came into the league, it's a revelation. Like that man does not look anything like what he was with the Lakers. So the fact that his athleticism dwindled in some respects and he was still as dominant as he was with the Los Angeles Lakers, that's amazing. If you look at someone like LeBron James, or like a lot of guys nowadays have tight physical regimen and eating things, or like regimens, and they stay in pretty good shape year round. That was not the case like 20 years ago. I mean, Antoine Walker's another guy who had like terrible weight gain problems. Him and Shaq are the big two that I think of. But I know there are other ones. I mean, no one talks about that anymore, of like guys showing up to training camp like 30 pounds overweight.
yeah, they talk about them being underweight, like Brandon Ingram and
Yeah, they got like, we got to
Ben
put some
Simmons.
muscle on those bones, which they did back then too. But also, like, guys being like, he's just not really being very healthy.
Yeah, so I would put, yeah. You know what? I'm gonna put. I wasn't married to my pick of Hakeem. I still stand by it. But if you watch the players who come into the league, or just not even come into the league, just if they join a team, that team immediately has changes. Their fortunes change. And the only players, I'm sure I'm missing a few, but the players that have done that are LeBron. He turned the Cavs from. I mean, his first year wasn't amazing. Like,
right, well, he's a generational player.
He immediately added 20 wins. Same thing with Shaq. Shaq immediately made the Orlando Magic contenders.
Yeah.
I didn't look that up for Hakeem. Michael Jordan immediately transformed the Bulls.
I don't know if
They
that's
didn't immediately win titles, but he showed up and balled, and
right.
not just balled, not just put up numbers. They won because of him.
Hmm. Yeah.
And that's why I think you have to put the big men in the conversation, because nobody else has that kind of effect. Kevin Durant didn't have that kind of effect.
Right. Well, I mean, I think especially nowadays with big men, because it's not like, one could argue that like back when Wilt Chamberlain was playing, like he was literally the only person that tall, right? Like, I don't think there were any other, like, I wonder how many people in the NBA back then were even above like 6'10".
We agreed we're not.
My guess is it wouldn't be a huge amount. Whereas now, being a 7-footer is not like out of the ordinary. Kevin Garnett was a 7-footer. Like, we have tons of players. We have power forwards who are 7 feet tall now. I mean, Kevin Durant, he's like 6'11". So there's a very little difference between 6'11" and 7 foot. And he's playing like what? What does he technically play? Small forward?
Yeah.
That's crazy. So I think that argument goes out the window even more now. For like the times of Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain, I could maybe see it. But now I think it's moot.
So, just so everybody's clear here.
Okay, I found it. So the Rockets went from 29-53 to 48-34 after they got Hakeem Olajuwon.
Huge.
It's huge. That's basically flipping their win-loss.
And then it's the same thing with the Magic, and the Cavs less so, but they still made a huge. And you also have to remember LeBron was like 18.
Right.
Hakeem had played 3 or 4 years in college and was he was like there. He's like, all right, let's do this. I'm you know what you're getting. He was even more that was probably an easier pick than LeBron. Number 1 pick. Or was he even the number 1 pick?
I don't know.
Yeah, he was the number 1 pick.
Okay. No,
LeBron
I think
still had to develop. LeBron wasn't a great shooter.
Right. Again, he was 18 years old.
And I think that's this more plays into our argument. LeBron is 6'8", 6'9". He's not he's an average shooter in the NBA. He's an average shooter. He's a good passer. And he's Well,
the thing about LeBron James, and this is what essentially great players do, is this is my litmus test for like a truly great player. Do they change the way that we think about how the game is played? And I think people like Shaquille O'Neal, people like even Kevin Durant to an extent, and LeBron James, Hakeem Olajuwon, when you're like, wow, I've never seen insert the blank, somebody that big be able to do that.
Yeah. And then you got to put Steph Curry in that conversation.
No.
He's changed the way people think about the game.
No, little people have been able to shoot the ball from deep all the time. I don't think it's in the same conversation. Honestly, I don't even think Kobe and Michael Jordan are in that same conversation, because I don't think, what they did was great, but they didn't change the way that you see the game of basketball being played. Like Russell Westbrook is another one. He may not be your top 5 in the NBA right now or whatever, but you look at him and he's just playing the game differently than other people are. And that's the kind of stuff that personally I really enjoy watching.
Yeah.
And that's what LeBron had when he came. They just changed the way that you talk about, that one talks about basketball in their
You can't say that without including Steph Curry. He's completely different.
I don't think
does
he
the
is.
Exact same thing.
He just hits shots from deep.
Nobody else hits him.
He doesn't do anything any different than that.
Yes, he does. He does it better than anybody.
His ball handling is no different. No, dude, people have been
pretty good. Allen Iverson said he thought he had better handles than him. And I'm not a Steph Curry fan.
Allen Iverson is another one. He did revolutionize the way the game was played.
Steph Curry is. People are. I don't think it's for the better. I think it's for the worse. I don't like seeing.
I think people are just sipping the Steph Curry Kool-Aid way too hard.
But he is a completely different player than
I
I've ever
disagree.
seen. But nobody else does it the way he does it. You can't argue with that. I don't think it's for
Yes,
the
I
better.
can.
I don't like seeing people other than him, even him. I don't like seeing people throwing up bricks from 8 feet beyond the 3-point line. I don't think that's good basketball unless it's coming down to a buzzer beater.
But here's the thing: people have been able to make 3-pointers forever.
He's changed the way the 3-pointer is shot, though. He can shoot it off the dribble. He can.
People have been.
Not regularly. He does that as a routine play. It's like the fadeaway.
We'll have to
similar.
agree to disagree.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're steering away from big men. I think we're pretty much ready to wrap it up. I think we've covered.
Yeah, I think we have. Is there anything else
scattered.
about big men you'd like to
I
put
just
in?
want to emphasize that to summarize it, I guess I'd say so. Let's say Shaq and Hakeem were equally effective as players, right? And
Yeah.
this is just nailing in
From a stats point of view?
just from an effectiveness point of view. They were both, I'd say, they were equal defenders and rebounders, right?
Yeah, I guess.
And they were pretty much. Shaq was a little bit better scorer, not much. He was much bigger and stronger. Not much bigger and stronger. He was bigger. He was bigger and stronger.
Mm-hmm.
Hakeem was far more skilled and maybe even more athletic. But it just shows that there's a sliding scale of the combination. You add the athleticism and the skill and the size.
Yeah, what I look
And
at
you get-
Shaquille O'Neal is that he lifted his teams whenever he went and played with them. When he went to the Lakers, when he was with the Magic, they got to a point that they had never gotten to since. They made it to one finals and then one conference finals, and then he was gone, I think, after that. And then he goes to the Lakers. They win 3 in a row. He basically, that team was not terrible, but they weren't great before he got there. And then you look at, then he goes to
you have to realize Kobe was evolving too.
Yeah, but Kobe, everybody says Shaq was the
he was the man.
He was the
Kobe
person on that team. He also
consistently getting
the
better.
closest we've ever had to a unanimous MVP, except for that one jerk who decided to vote for Allen Iverson instead.
Well, no, Steph Curry was a unanimous MVP
Oh, he
last
was?
year.
Okay,
Yeah.
never mind that.
But that's the reasons why I've been debunked. It's because
That makes me angry. So hold on, I'm not done.
Yeah.
And then he went to the Heat, and he helped Dwayne Wade win a championship.
Yeah, I'm not arguing.
Yeah, so I think that 4 championships for, and granted, I don't know enough about Hakeem Olajuwon's playing career because he played like 6 years before I was even born, and so I don't. It's hard. That's where stats don't really help unless they're like just blow it out of the water what everyone else is doing at the time. Because I think you really have to watch players play. Like you have to watch the game film, and you have to see what, like, the stats don't say everything.
I'm not. If you watch Hakeem, it was
awesome.
it was beautiful.
Yes. Okay, but so question.
Yeah.
Right now, who are your best in the game right now? Who do you think are the best big men
Best big men
in the game? Give me top 5.
This has really been I've been wavering on this one because nobody's that consistent. I'd say number 1 is probably Boogie.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, just go through your top 5.
So him.
Yeah.
I'm really fading off of Marc Gasol, but a few years ago it was Marc Gasol.
Right. I think he's fading too. He's getting a little old.
After those two, I don't know. It was Drummond.
What about Anthony Davis?
Yeah, he's definitely in there. You could put him above above Marc Gasol and DeMarcus Cousins. I didn't consider him as much of a big man just because he's so skinny, but yeah.
He plays center.
Yeah, he usually plays power forward, but I'll give him that. Yeah, Anthony Davis, Boogie, Marc Gasol, and then yeah, I don't.
Yeah, I mean, people talk about like Andre Drummond.
He's not there yet. Towns isn't there yet.
Yeah, well, it's hard to tell. He had.
Joel Embiid's looked good. He's not very athletic,
Yeah.
but he's
What
good.
about Hassan?
Hassan's good.
Yeah.
He hasn't been consistent though, I don't think.
No. What about Rudy? My boy.
He doesn't have the same offensive abilities that Hassan Whiteside, even Hassan Whiteside.
He's getting better. I think you need to watch do me a favor, watch a Utah game whenever you have the chance, because you will be impressed by Rudy Gobert.
I've seen him protect the rim.
He's a very good player. He plays.
I've come up with 3 or 4.
Yeah.
There is no fifth. We can't call it a top 5 if the fifth guy just falls off of a cliff, right?
Well, so who were your tops go again? So no, I think we had more than that. You said Anthony Davis. Does you put him number 1?
Yeah, definitely.
Or do you put Cousins ahead of that?
I still put Cousins just because he's bigger and meaner, and I don't know if he's better. I mean, Sacramento's been a better team because of him. I feel like than. You know what? No, I'll put Anthony Davis. They almost made the playoffs pretty much because of him.
Yeah, he's the only good.
So him, Cousins, Marc Gasol, and Hassan Whiteside, I would say are 4. And then I don't think there are.
What about Al Horford?
He's good. I don't think
you're not even going to put Rudy in that conversation?
I don't think they're on the same level. Al Horford, he doesn't have the automatic bucket capabilities that the other guys have.
No, he doesn't.
He's a good defender and he's a good rebounder, but he's more like a Karl Malone to me than those guys. Those guys are, they're not better than Karl Malone, but they're approaching.
Well, it's different. We also have to remember Karl Malone's offensive output is better than any of these guys that we just mentioned, except for maybe Anthony Davis. Like Karl Malone he was more of a power forward because he was a really good, and he could do it all offensively.
Yeah.
And he didn't really play on the low post. He didn't have to.
Anthony Davis, and so can DeMarcus Cousins. I'm going to take. I probably want to take away points from both of them, especially DeMarcus Cousins, because he just does some. I don't want to. I like him. I don't want to harp on him too much, but he bites off more than he can chew.
Yeah.
Far too regularly. I don't know how many turnovers I've seen of him trying to be a point guard.
Yeah.
It's just don't do that, man. Like. You got to recognize your limitations.
Yeah.
Maybe once a year you can have a play where you decide to be the point guard, just to give everybody something to talk about. But night in, night out, you're going to be making a lot of turnovers.
So do you think that it's the hot thing to talk about right now because people are like, "Ooh, the big men are back"? Do you think that's the case?
No. Not yet. None of those guys are. They're not in the playoffs. They're not the reason a playoff team
right.
is.
They're not carrying their team.
Yeah.
Although I think Andre Drummond, Anthony Davis, DeMarcus Cousins, and Karl Anthony Towns, they can get there.
Yeah, but in the next few years, the best we can imagine out of them is an 8th seed, maybe a 7th seed.
No, I mean I think if you put the right pieces around Anthony Davis, he can legitimately be. He can be like what Shaq was to the Lakers or what Hakeem was to the Rockets, like their cornerstone.
So this goes into another theory that I've been playing around with in my head that about big men, and that is that I think that with the exception of Dirk, the outside shot has not really been a net plus to them. I think that it disrupts the flow of the offense.
Oh, I agree.
And
I don't like it
from offensive rebounding.
I think it's useless.
It's not. I think it's nice to have the threat, but I don't think it should be a consistent weapon.
But I just don't. Right. I think it disrupts the flow. But again, Dirk wasn't like launching up threes on the regular.
Yeah. Well, you watch him play. He's an outside shooter.
Now, but he wasn't.
He's always been an outside shooter. That's what made him such an enigma.
No, I think he was like a middle distance shooter. Like he was the first guy who could like kind of step back from the post and do that like turnaround fadeaway shot that he's so famous for.
And yeah, that's when he was at his best. He also made
Right.
he was always he took a three every game.
Right, but he wasn't like spotting up and being like, "Oh, hit me, I'm here." You know what I mean?
And see, that's why I'm
Because that's the thing that like Kevin Love does. He just like stands out on the
But
3-point
Kevin
line.
Love he's a power forward. He's not a
Right.
I've been disappointed.
He's 6'10".
in Kevin
He's a
Love.
pretty large gentleman.
I thought he was at his best when he was banging around on the inside.
I agree.
Good post moves.
Yeah.
He could rebound like the best of them, but he just doesn't. He's a great shooter though, so I guess you got to let him.
But I feel like you can. But again, like you said, you need offensive rebounds out of. Oh, we didn't even mention Steven Adams.
Adams is a good big man. I don't think he's just not doesn't do enough.
Yeah, no, it's true. But I think we saw, and I guess maybe this is the main point about the big man, is that last season in the playoffs, the fact that he was able to be like serviceable offensively and defensively changed what the Thunder were able to do as a basketball team, which is why I think big men are so important in today's game, is because as we saw with Steven Adams, when a big man becomes more able to do those kinds of things, it changes the team's ability in terms of what they can do offensively and defensively.
And I don't think that unless you have LeBron on your team, I don't think you want your big man shooting.
No, but again, yeah.
See, that's why Kevin Love has to shoot. He makes it way easier for LeBron to get in the lane.
Right.
That's the same thing with Chris Bosh. If Kevin Love was on any other team, it wouldn't really make sense for him to be an outside shooter, which is just why I find it so weird that he's on the Cavs. But he's making it work now.
Well, they just 27 3-pointers in one game, right?
That was outrageous. On the 3-pointer note, Marc Gasol is now knocking down the three regularly, and I don't think that makes. I don't think the Grizz are
better for that.
Better off because of that. I don't know if they're worse off, but I don't think they're better off. It just happens.
Interesting. Well, we'll leave it at that, I think, unless there's some final thoughts for you about big men or anything you'd like to add.
No, that was it.
All right. Well, thank you, Mateo, and thank you, folks, for listening. We will see you next time.
Adios.